So talk
Right.
about kind of the revenue streams from self-storage, because like I said, a lot of my listeners, we're coming from the single family world and might not know
Yep.
much about self-storage.
Yeah. So, in the single family world, you only got maybe a few streams of income. So you can get rent, you can maybe charge for a garage or parking, and then maybe some laundry income if you have some coin laundry. In
Small pet
self-storage, we
fee.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. In self-storage, we have multiple streams of income. So we can do, on top of renting the units, we can do car storage, RV storage, boat storage. We can sell locks. We can sell renter's insurance and keep a portion of the premium. Moving supplies, packaging materials. We can have FedEx boxes, printing services, um, scanning services. We can have cell towers on our site that produce income pretty steadily, billboard advertisements. We can do like boutiques type of storage, like wine storage. We can also operate truck rentals, private mailboxes, propane filling, ATMs, vending machines, fingerprint scanners. So there's all these different avenues that you can add in there. And so
Gotcha.
to take a step back, when we look at some of these facilities, what's typical is we're buying a facility from typically someone that is between 60 to 90 years old. This is probably their second or third time that they're retiring. They usually don't operate it as their main business. It's usually a secondary business or a hobby of sorts because they had extra land. And they're not being super diligent on their rental collections and their auctions or their evictions, if you will. So in the self-storage world, there is no such thing as evictions. It's lien law as opposed to rental landlord tenant law. So when someone puts their stuff in one of my self-storage units, they're automatically giving me a lien in the amount of, whatever the rent or whatever it is. And so the second that they stop paying, I'm able to actually exercise my lien and auction off their facility or auction off their unit to collect any back due rent or fees that I may have.
Gotcha.
So when we walk into these facilities, here's what I'm typically seeing. There's a ton of back due units that have not paid in a long time. They keep giving the owner these stories. They're kind of buddy. So the owner doesn't want to be, super diligent on charging late fees or auctioning off units. So number one thing I do when I walk in is we're going to immediately start working out plans with the people that are behind, saying, hey, I'm the new owner. In the next week, you have to call me and let me know how you're going to pay this, either on a payment plan or pay it all together, or else I'm auctioning off your stuff. And I've already overlocked your unit, so you can't get access to your stuff until you either pay or, put together a payment plan. The next thing is looking at the vacancy. So a lot of the times these facilities won't have any marketing whatsoever. I mean, to the point where you can't even find them on Google. You can't find them on any websites. The only way that you'd know that they existed is if you drove by them, which is a terrible way to market. So we'll set up a website that allows people to rent right from the website. We'll claim a Google My Business page so that it shows up on Google Maps searches and on Google search results. And then we'll also pay for aggregator sites like Sparefoot, where you go in and they'll show all the available units in an area, and then it's kind of like a bidding system for the owners.
Cool.
So that's the marketing side of it as far as getting the things filled. The next part of the value add, like I said, is dropping all the expenses. And a lot of that is done prior to closing on the property. Some of it is done after closing on the property. And then expansion potential in the end, making sure that we can increase the value by either adding units or increasing the grade of the facility, right? If I buy a Class C facility, it's, let's say, drive up self-storage with no security fences, no gates, no cameras or security lights. Maybe it's not paved. We'll do all those things as well on the physical improvement side. So we'll pave it, we'll add fencing, gates, we'll put security cameras, keypad entry and exit so I can track people going in and out, and then offer storage 24 hours a day. So all these things will help me go from, like, say, a Class C facility to a Class B facility, and that will drop the cap rate that I'm valued at or where I could sell it at.
Gotcha. Okay. One quick thing I want to go back to, you mentioned dropping expenses. Obviously, when you buy the property, you're always working to lower expenses. You also mentioned lowering expenses before you buy the property. If you can kind of
Right.
talk about that and how, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for example, like I said before, when you go to purchase it, let's say I'm buying $1 million facility, as opposed to saying, here's a purchase agreement for $1 million. I say, hey, seller, I'm going to actually give you two purchase agreements. I'm going to give you one purchase agreement for 600,000 for the land and all the improvements thereon. And then I'm going to give you another purchase agreement for 400,000 for the business goodwill, and all the business assets like the phone, the number, the brand name, things like that. The property tax assessor in almost all counties in the United States, not all of them, but most, can only levy a tax against the building, the improvements, in the land. They can't put property taxes on the business and the goodwill. Now, there are some counties in more difficult to deal with states, such as California, areas around Chicago, where they will make you file some type of exemption that you have to pay taxes on the full value of the
Right.
purchase, regardless if it's land and improvements or goodwill and business. Other things is, doing your work ahead of time on property taxes. So not only splitting the purchase price, but then immediately engaging a tax attorney to contest those taxes. And then insurance, making sure that when we go and we start getting insurance quotes, that we can usually get it lowered by 30-40%, because we go to a self-storage specific insurer, property insurer, as opposed to, say, some guy that from State Farm that just does your single family, it does your
Right.
home and your car.
Right. Okay. Super cool. I'm already learning a ton of little nuances within self-storage. This is awesome. So, wow, where do I go from here? So on the buying side, you mentioned just like how in single family, multifamily, residential, there's different there's A, B, C, and they go to
Right.
down to D. So I'm curious to know kind of your buy box as far as not only just the class of the product, but also, do you look for a certain population or population growth, or, what's your criteria when actually looking to buy a facility?
Yeah. And, as a lot of things in real estate, it depends.
Right.
So what I'll break it apart into is what we do versus what you should do as your first time, if it's your
Okay.
first facility, because we have enough experience now where we can go into areas and markets where a first time buyer will get crushed, but because we have speed of implementation, we know how to operate, we have connections in the industry, we can still make a lot of money off of those.
Right.
So let's go on the grading, for example. So Class A facilities, you as an individual investor will probably never buy these because you're competing against large institutional REITs. And the breakdown of the market is as such that it's extremely fragmented. So here's what I mean by that. There's roughly 72,000 self-storage facilities in the United States.
Wow.
18% of those facilities are owned by the 6 largest REITs, real estate investment trusts. These are names that U-Haul, Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart, right? Those are the guys that are buying the Class A's and the Class B pluses. That's 18%. Then there's another 9% or so that are owned by the next 100 largest operators. I'm one of those 100, right? So that means that there's still like 72% of the facilities out there that are owned by mom and pop investors, where they own 2 or fewer investors, or 2 or fewer facilities. So when you're looking at Class A, you're never going to buy those. Later on in your career, you can start building them and selling them, or building them and keeping them. But in the beginning, you're never going to buy that, just because you're going to be competing against people that are buying at a 5% cap rate, and that doesn't make sense for you. Then you have your Class B. So your Class B is going to have, I guess I should describe what a Class A is. Class A is a multi-story facility that is almost 100% climate control. It has all the latest technology. It's got security, multiple points of entry, multiple points of security blocks. I mean, you see them all around. They look like beautiful office buildings, right?
Yeah.
A Class B facility is going to be one that has, maybe in front, it has a 1 or 2 story climate control area, interior access with all the security that you'd expect from a Class A. But then in the back, it's going to have a bunch of these drive up non-climate control facilities, or drive up maybe a little bit of climate control.
Thanks for watching that clip from the Real Estate Investing Made Simple podcast. If you want to see the entire interview, go ahead and click the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for all future episodes.